Well, it's been 23 days since I started fermenting the rum, and it's pretty much settled down. So we're going to take specific gravity reading and then run this thing through the still. So our specific gravity here is, it's good. You can see if I pull this out here, at the bottom where the green and blue meet, that's 0. That's about where, see where it says 1? That's the weight of water. So when I put this in here, it's actually lighter than water, so that means the alcohol is all in there. It's fermented all the sugars into alcohol, and we started with about a potential 12% alcohol, so that's what I'm assuming is that's what I'm going to have in this batch. So now let's get to fermenting, or I should say distilling this. What I'm doing is I pour about half of it into the pot on the floor, and then I lift that pot up onto the stove and then pour the rest in, just because these jugs are pretty heavy, 40-50 pounds. I just don't feel like lifting the thing that high to pour it in. So I'll pour the rest in on the stove now. So I've got all of my low wines, you could call it, the fermented molasses and brown sugar in the pot. So I'm going to start cooking it. Just a word or two about this. This is about as full as you want it. You don't want to fill it right up, because when it starts heating up, there's a potential to foam up and froth up and get all into your the head of your distiller, the line arm, and just make a big mess. And you don't want that. So just keep the level. This is probably almost a bit high. I'm going to have to be real careful when I heat this up. And if you find that you have too much product to put in the pot, if you have some left over in your carboy or your fermenter, whatever you're using to ferment this stuff in, just leave it there. Don't worry about it. And then when you do this is what we call a stripping run. Okay, we're just going to strip the alcohol out of this without taking too much care. And then later on we'll do what they call spirit runs. So you can introduce the rest. If you have any of this leftover low wines that you can't fit in your pot, don't worry about it. You can just put it in when you do your spirit run, because when you do your spirit run, you're only going to have a small amount comparatively to what you've got here. So let's say I've got 20 liters. I don't, but let's say I had 20 liters and I have 12% alcohol, so that would be 2.4 liters of alcohol. So I'm going to end up with probably 5 liters maximum at the end of this stripping run. So I'm going to just put this together and start doing it. There we go. So anyway, yeah, I tried this on an electric stove. Doesn't work because the bottom is not, it's not a real heavy bottom on this. So it warps and it doesn't really contact the electric element that well. So that's why I use gas stove. If you decide you need electric, you should go, you can get some that have a band heater that's built right into them. You can attach the band heater to the outside of it, or they have an immersible heater set up with electronic controls and stuff, which is great. They take a little longer to run than mine, but that's what I use. So I basically built this, the top part of this, so I have a bit of a pot, you could say, which I actually welded that onto the lid there. That's an ice bucket that I got from a dollar store. Yeah, so there's my 2-inch copper column, you could say. Now right now it's empty. This column is about 18 inches high. It's empty, but when I do a spirit run, then I'll pack it with copper mesh. Some people prefer stainless steel. They say it's easier to clean. But anyway, I use copper. Let me see if this is good in focus. So at the head I have the temperature gauge, which is very important in order to monitor the temperature of the distillate. When it starts coming out, the sweet spot is like 80 degrees Celsius, and that's when you get your good ethanol coming out of the still. We can talk more about that later on. So then as the steam, the vaporized ethanol moves its way up here down the line arm, this is reduced to a 1-inch line. Then here it reduces to 3/4. Actually, that's half. Goes from 1 down to half. And then inside this here fitting, I have another fitting that goes reduces down to 1/4 inch. The 1/4 inch fitting actually is here. So this goes from 2-inch to 1-inch to 1/2 inch. And then right here, this fitting, it reduces further again to 1/4 inch. So this 1/4 inch copper line goes all the way down, and that's my outlet. So what I have here is I soldered over top of that a 3/4 inch line, and that's my condenser or my cooling jacket. It's important to have a cooling system. You have to condense that vapor. So there it is. Zoom in a little bit, maybe focus it like that, and you can see the water goes out the top, goes in the bottom. So you have to, if you're going to do a still, you have to have a water source. You have to have somewhere where the water's going to come from and where it's going to go to. And some use a pump. Some there's all different ways of doing it. This is the way I did it. It's the most convenient for me for my setup. So this takes a couple, 3 hours, maybe 4 hours, and I'll show you how I hook it onto the sink. So this is my sink tap. So I just unscrew my sprayer head, and it just so happens it's 1/2 inch pipe thread, which is awesome. So I just put a 1/2 inch nipple in there. And one word of caution, there's a rubber O-ring that fits on top of here, and you have to make sure that's still in there when you screw your black pipe fitting or galvanized fitting in there, the 1/2 inch. Then I just have it reduced down to a fitting where I have a supply line that you would get on lavatory taps, kitchen tap, whatever. And so this here just runs up to the condenser on the still. And then here's the tube where the water comes out. I'll turn that on. You can see the water coming out. I don't normally even turn this on until the temperature of the still starts getting up to around 40 or 50 degrees Celsius. Once it hits 40, it goes fast. You have to be paying attention, be right there, so that you can get your cooling water going. Otherwise, it's just going to shoot vapor out. You're going to lose the alcohol. So I'll just keep working the still, and we'll go from there. So the still here is running at about 80 degrees Celsius. And it'll run at 80 for quite a while. That's the sweet spot for the still. So that'll run for a period of time. And once I finish this pot, then I'll combine the 2 batches that I have. I already have some accumulated in the back, you can see. I got about 5 liters out of the first batch of distillate. I don't really know what the proof is or the percentage. It's probably around 40% or so, 50%, I don't know. So yeah, it's pretty good. So once I get this batch done, then I'll do a second run called a spirit run. So as the temperature climbs, it'll climb from, well, distillate will start coming out at about 65 degrees Celsius, which is actually methanol, so you should discard that. Anything that I get out of the still from up to about 75, 78 degrees Celsius, I toss that away. And then this still will run, when it gets to about 95%, I would say that this stripping run is all done. Then later on, when we do the spirit run, we have to pay real close attention to the temperature, and we'll address that in the next bit there when we do the spirit run. Okay, I finished both of my stripping runs, so the next step is to pour in to the pot all of the distillate you got from the 2 stripping runs. So what I'll do now is I'm going to pour all of it in. There's about 10 liters of distillate, and then I'm going to measure the alcohol by volume. There's a specific tool. It's like a hygrometer, but it's calibrated differently. So I'll fill this up with all of my distillate, and then we'll check and see what our actual percentage of alcohol was in this batch. So I have about the pot's about half full, so I'd say 10 liters of distillate in there. So now I'm going to measure. I mixed it up a bit already. I'm going to measure the alcohol content. So I'm using a proofing hygrometer, which is different than a specific gravity hygrometer. It's weighted differently, and this will give me a reading. There we go, it's floating already. And the alcoholic content of this is yeah, it's about 49%. Don't know if you can see that on there. Let me see if I can zoom that in a little bit and then focus it. So yeah, it's about 49%. And now I'm going to add the leftover low wines that I couldn't fit into the pot, and add that into it, and then I'm going to run this through the still again. And the idea is to end up with about a 60 or 70, probably a 70% of product, and I'll have some left over that I'm not going to use for drinking, and so I'll get going on that right now. This is the leftover low wines. Still has 12% alcohol in there. I don't want to throw that down the sink. There we go. So I'll button this thing up and get her going and see where that takes us. So I'm on my first spirit run, and I studied production at 42 degrees, and right now it's just pushing 70. This is the thing, it takes forever to get up to 40, and then it just starts to climb. You got to really pay close attention. So now what's coming out of here is methanol. Methanol comes out first up to about 70, 75 degrees Celsius. And when it gets to 75, then we start getting the ethanol. So it's really crucial that you collect the methanol and dispose of it. It's toxic, it's poisonous, it could really it's bad for you. So you got to get rid of that. So I'm just waiting until my thermometer gets up to 75 degrees, and there it is right there. So it's always good to have a couple of jars around so you can just do your switching around. So now I'm collecting ethanol, the good stuff right there. So this is the nasty stuff, so I can either throw this out or keep it for cleaning and doing stuff. I used to keep it, but I got so much of it, I just throw it down the sink. So what I'll be doing now is monitoring the alcoholic content. I can see some steam coming up there, so just crank up my cooling flow a little bit. I'll let this fill up about a quarter full, and then I'll check the alcohol content of it, pour it in a jug, and I'll just keep checking it every once in a while. So I've got, this is my first little test of the alcoholic content. Let me see if I can get it better. You can see it's sitting at 175 proof, or 88 degrees. That's 88% alcohol. And this distillate is really pretty hot, so I'm sure that it's not an accurate reading. If it was cooler, it might be up a little toward 85. So this first spirit run, that's what I expect, mid to high 80s for much of the run. My second spirit run, I'll be getting above 90 for quite a bit of the run. And some say you don't need to do 3 spirit runs, but I prefer it. I just find the stuff tastes better, get the nastiness out of it. That some of will if you don't, I guess it depends on your equipment too. If you have the equipment I have, I find I need to do 3 spirit runs. Maybe your equipment's better, you only need to do 2. So anyway, I'll keep doing this, and then when we're done, we'll do it again, I guess. So at the end of my first spirit run, this is what I ended up with here. I got a 3-liter jug here and a 2-liter here, so that adds up to 5. And this is a 1.5, so now that adds up to 5, 6.5. And this is a 750, so 6.5, 7. I got 7.25 liters of distillate out of my first spirit run. So now I'm going to put this back in the pot, and I'm going to figure out what the alcohol by volume is, the percentage out of that first spirit run, and then we'll do our second spirit run, I should say, our second and final spirit run. So I've added the first spirit run to the pot, mixed it up, and I end up with, as you can see, we're at 70% alcohol. So, well, I failed to mention that first spirit run. I actually ran that thing pretty hard, the still, right down to about 40%. 40% alcohol coming out of the still, and the temperature of the head of the still was up around above 90 degrees Celsius. I figured I'd just strip everything out of there I could, and so I end up with 70% average. So the goal for my next spirit run is to have an average of 80% alcohol. So that's what I'm going to do now. So I'll show you how I'll alter the column. I'm going to pack it with the copper mesh, and then we'll do our final spirit run. So I've got the column sitting there. So what I do is I just have this copper mesh that I bought. I bought it either off Amazon or AliExpress, one of those websites. So I have 3 of these. I just roll them up and put them in there. Now they're starting to look kind of oxidized. I understand that I could soak them in vinegar or something and get them cleaned up. I just rinse them real good in water. I've noticed that, like the last one I put in is the longer of the bunch. It fits in a little tighter that way. I don't want the stuff to somehow slide down out of the column into my pot. That wouldn't serve any benefit. So yeah, that's in there. I noticed this last one, the one I always put in last, looks different than the others. Well, it's receiving all the garbage right off the bat. So the idea behind this is to make a bit of a reflux still. So as the vapor goes up, it'll start to have to pass through all this copper and start cooling it down, and it'll fall back into the pot. So it starts to like re-distill over and over again. Finally it works its way to the top, and by the time the vapor gets to the top, the stuff that does make it through is quite pure and good tasting. Now some of the stills have stainless in them, some have ceramic balls in them. There's all different designs. You just pick the one you're comfortable with. This is what I use, and it seems to work okay. So now I'm going to put this all together and start distilling. So my third run, my second spirit run, it only took about 15-20 minutes before the still started producing. And what I have here is, looking at my thing here, and it's, oh come on, cooperate, there we go. It's running about 93% alcohol. So that's what I expected. There's not much flavor in that. This is more like vodka rum, you would say. But as this run carries on, the alcoholic value will drop, and I'm gonna continue collecting until this thing reaches 70% alcohol, and when it reaches 70, then that's the stuff I'll keep for consumption, you could say. So yeah, so I'll once I get the spirit run done, then we'll start looking at cutting it down to cask strength and then aging it. So in order to age this stuff, you need to use white oak, and I like to toast it up, char it up first. So I just so happen to have a wood stove going. We're in the throes of winter here in northern Ontario, so of course. So I got the fire just coals, burnt down to coals, so I'll put these in. Now you have to use white oak, you can't use any other kind of, you can't use red oak. They're both different types of wood. Look at that, it's already on fire. That didn't take long. I'm going to grab a thing of water so I can quench that. Now the more charred it is, the more of the flavor and such you get out of the oak. Now the obvious best way to do this is to put your product into a oak barrel, but I don't have one. I'm trying to get that to go out, it won't go out, so I'll throw it in some. I just have like a container of water there, so it is hot. I'm burning myself. Well, not really, but kind of. I usually do this sort of thing when my wife's not around. I don't have to explain to you why, I don't think. Okay. It won't go out. Okay, I'm going to burn something here. There we go. So I've already charred a bunch of my pieces of wood up. So I just I buy a piece of white oak. I actually got this from my brother. He's rebuilding a boat a couple of years back. He had some leftover white oak, and you can pick this up at some sort of a specialty lumber supply. Most most hardware stores don't carry white oak, so just find some, get yourself a plank of that or a piece of it, slice it up on a table saw into sizes that are, you know, this is fairly small, but it has to be small enough to fit into the neck of a bottle. And you want to put maybe 3 or 4 in there. We'll do that later on. And this one is not charred too much on one end. I'm going to throw that back in there and see if I can get the other ends charred up a bit. Yeah, so you grab yourself some piece of white oak, slice it up in the table saw into, I would say, like the size of a carpenter pencil, and that way it'll fit into the neck of the bottle easier. And I reuse these over and over. If I'm done with a bottle, it's done aging, then I don't throw these away, I just keep using them. Okay, that's charred up okay. I'm going to put that in the water. Yeah, so that's me making the charred oak staves for the purpose of aging. So at the end of my second spirit run, or the third run in total, I had a stripping run, then I had 2 spirit runs. So at the end of the second spirit run, I ended up with, I think, about 6 liters, probably a little less than 6 liters. Let's say 5.5 liters of distillate. And as you can see, it turned out pretty good for proof, for percentage. I'm at 85, 86% alcohol. So what I have to do now is dilute that down to between 60 and 65%, and that's for aging. You don't want to age your when you age, you age it with white oak, as I kind of mentioned before. If if the if it's too strong, if you're up to like 70-80%, and you try to age it at that strength, it's not going to taste good. It's going to draw too much of the wood out of your product. Will taste like wood. And ask me how I know this. I tried it once at 70. I didn't like it. So 60 to 65% is your ideal thing. So now I'm going to add water to this. You have to be careful what kind of water you add. Most people would buy distilled water. It's not that expensive to purchase at the grocery store. I'm just going to use my water, because my tap water, because I have really good water. It's Sandpoint. There's no additives in it. It's soft and it's pure. Tastes real good. So that's what I'm going to use. So I'm going to cut this down to about 60 to 65%. So I'm just going to keep adding water and measuring the alcohol until I get to the point where I want to be. Okay, so I've added some water to my the distillate, and I've arrived at about 61, 62%. So that's pretty much perfect. So I actually did mathematics to calculate. So I took my volume, which was I calculated at 5.5 liters, and so I typed in 5.5, and then I multiplied that by was it 82%, and I ended up with 4.51, and I divided that by my target, which was 6.62, and I ended up with a value of 7.27. So my total volume should be 7.27 liters if I want to have this at 62%. Hope you can follow the math here. It's not really that complicated. I mean, I can do it. So what I did was I figured, okay, I have like 5.25 liters, and I want to end up with 7.25. So I put 2 liters in and measured it. It was still up around 67%, so I added that 1/4 liter, and yeah, it ended up right around 62%. So it was just as I added each liter of water, I kept checking and measuring it, because I don't want to over dilute it, because boy, it's hard. I don't know what I would do if that happened. I'd have to back up, and I don't know. It would be a disaster. But anyway, now I'm going to bottle this stuff and put the oak in it. So here's the finished result. I've put the oak pieces in each bottle. The larger bottles, of course, I put more oak. And so I've labeled them. It's important to do that. So I put on here rum, 62%. I put the date so I know how long it's going to age for. And then I put 3 X's. So each X represents a pass through the still. So it's triple distilled, you could say. So what happened? What were the results? Well, I got 8 liters at 62%, which works out to 12 liters at 62%. Let me just do some math here. 8 liters times 0.62 equals 4.96 divided by, if I want to drink it at 40%, that equals 12.4 liters at 40%. But each bottle will not be 1 liter, it will be 0.75. So what do? I'm going to divide by 0.75, see what happens. Okay, 16.5 bottles. So this is going to, at the end of the day, 16.5 bottles, and my total input cost on this was, well, like I mentioned before, the sugar and molasses was $48.48, and then a bit of yeast and yeast energizer So let's say 16, I'm going to just round it down to 16 bottles. So let's say I had $52 of expenses divided by 16 bottles. So it works out to $3.25. So it's about 10% of the cost. So now the hard part comes. The hard part is to store this away and leave it age without, you know, wanting to have a taste now and then. Well, you do whatever you want. I'm going to stuff this away. I'm going to give some away for safekeeping. So I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any comments, feel free to leave them, any suggestions. And thanks for watching.